Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, just making sure before we try to start.
We can hold on that for just a minute if you want. I think we need hopefully Tony and Jeanette to join. We'll give them a couple more minutes. Thank you. We'll just give them a couple more minutes. Been quite the airport day. Oh, just give me 1 second. This is Tony now.
Mute. I can see you. I'm hooked in, but you don't.
Shh.
Okay. I can see you, but thanks a lot.
All right. I can confirm you're 5x5, Tony, with audio.
Roger that. Thank you much.
Should we check in maybe with Jeanette?
I can call her.
Thank you.
You're like, I should have a routine of aviation-themed dad jokes just for these intervals.
I agree.
Yeah.
The select board started playing coming up music before their meetings during the holidays. So I could always pipe in the theme from Airplane.
There you go.
Yeah, anyone who's ever watched professional wrestling, we should all have our entrance music as we come on.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about planes, so maybe I'm just going to wing it for a little bit.
Boo. Boo.
Come on, this idea could really take off, guys.
Yeah, boo. Boo. Andrea, don't feed into him.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, don't
laugh at him.
No.
We'll just encourage him.
That's it.
Hey, nothing but first-class jokes.
Yeah, all right, there we go. You wrote these all down ahead of time, didn't you?
I'm on a Reddit thread. I can't take credit.
Did you get her?
I can hear her talking to Jeanette right now through the wall.
Oh, perfect. All right, perfect. Thank you.
So, Phil, what happened to the plane that was colored in camouflage?
Say again?
What happened to the plane that was covered in camouflage?
Where was this? I didn't see that.
I don't know. It was hiding in plain sight.
Oh, man.
Did you hear about the poor bugger that left here and he was flying the jet there, shoot. It's not the Toyota jet. What the hell is it?
The Honda jets.
The Honda jet. He went to, this really happened. This isn't a joke. But he flew up to New Hampshire, and there was a snowbank on the side of the runway, and he thought it was a center line. Took his nose gear off.
What?
Ooh,
Yeah, that was a bad day. He struggled it back on the runway and saved it, though. Nobody got hurt.
Ooh.
Kind of crazy. Steve Cheney happened to be there when it happened.
Oh,
Kind of scary.
yeah, it's funny. I always look at the Boston Logan markings whenever I fly in. You know, they're doing everything they can to avoid those wrong surface landings. Taxi in big letters on the taxi lanes between, what is it? It's 3-3 right and left. Do I have that correct?
It's 2-2 right, 2-2 left, and it's taxiway Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy place to land in taxi, but you really got to like pay attention before you go there, you know. Review all the charts and all that stuff.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be an easy path to signature. You know, you have to deal with the same geometry as everyone else.
Yeah.
JFK is even more fun. They have like two taxiways. There's an inner taxiway and an outer taxiway. They
Yeah,
go all
Boston
the
has
way
that
around
too.
the main airport.
Yeah. Boston has that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's just not all the way around. Yeah, it's on the
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Villy, are you back? Maybe we'll just get started through the agenda and minutes and all that if we want to start the recording when you have a chance, please.
This meeting is being recorded.
Perfect. Thank you. And if we could bring anybody over from the waiting room, if there are any. This is Arthur Gasparo, Chair of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. I will call to order the January 14th, 2025 meeting. The meeting is being held entirely remotely with registration available through Zoom as detailed on the agenda. Please be careful to mute your microphone while not speaking. Anything that you say may be captured by the recording and broadcast. All votes in the meetings being both audio and video recorded, and all votes will be conducted by roll call. Present for the commission, Commissioner Marks, Commissioner Buscarin, Commissioner Planzer, and hopefully Commissioner Topham will join us here shortly. Are there any questions or concerns with the agenda as published? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the minutes from December 6th, December 10th, or December 18th? Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. Is there a motion to ratify the warrant from December 4th and December 18th?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Is there any public comment for items that are otherwise not on the agenda? I'm not seeing any members of the public. So we will move on to a public hearing to consider proposed revisions to the airport's rates and charges. And I have a brief statement that I will read to open up this public hearing. The Nantucket Memorial Airport routinely reviews and updates the rates and charges assessed to airport users. The goal in establishing the fees is to provide fair and reasonable rates charged on an equitable basis to recover the costs associated with the operation and maintenance of the airport. The airport faces capital improvement needs in the next 5 to 10 years. Infrastructure is aging. The purchasing power of airport improvement program grant funding is decreasing. The pace of inflation has gained national attention, and the costs to maintain and attract qualified personnel have increased. In order to maintain economic sustainability where direct airport users bear the cost for operating the airport instead of taxpayers, A carefully managed rates and charges structure is essential to recover costs, pay for operations, and plan for future infrastructure repairs. The current revision proposes an across-the-board approach to provide a consistent percentage increase to major revenue categories to maintain revenue commensurate with expenses. Despite these expenses, historical and proposed revisions to aeronautical rates remain lower than industry comparable airports and competitive for non-hub and small hub commercial service airports. Highlights of the proposed revisions will be reviewed by the airport manager. And with that, I would like to turn in the public hearing over to Manager Carberg.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Billy, could you share the redlined document? And I'll call out the page numbers as I begin.
Sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Noah, just quick update on Ms. Topham. She is facing a trouble to log in to the meeting. She won't be able to log in for now.
And maybe she could just call in.
I don't think there is a direct phone on the webinar thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed the email was a little different this time than in the past. The link was different. That's probably what's throwing her off.
If you don't mind, I'm just looking up one option very quickly. Beg your pardon. Yeah, so I agree with Billy. I don't see a phone number option. So if you would like, Mr. Chair, I could continue with rates and charges.
Yes, please.
Okay. So starting with page, so this year staff have proposed a limited revision of rates and charges, focusing on an across-the-board increase for ramp and landing fees of 3.5% based on consumer price index for the previous year. We reviewed the common hangar assessment in response to tenant feedback, and we have a few miscellaneous updates. I'm going to start off slowly, pick up speed, but then I'll slow it down to walk through the hangar methodology. So on page 1 to 2 for signatory terminal users, we are increasing the landed weight multiplier from $3.61 for 1,000 pounds of maximum gross takeoff weight to $3.74. And we'll carry that section through on all landing fee sections in the document. And then for signatory carriers only, we increased the waiver by reducing the multiplier from 62% to 60%. This is consistent with our policy to limit the rate increase on any signatory year-round carrier, and continues that tradition. So the ramp fees and the remain overnight fees in sections H and I respectively increased by the same 3.5%. And then the airport LEO assessment, which is backward looking, will increase to 41 cents per in-plane passenger. And with adoption, we'll bill out the airlines for the past year's law enforcement rates accordingly. On page 2 to 3 for our non-signatory terminal users, you see the same across the board, 3.5% increase across landing fee, ramp fee, and round. On page 3 to 4 for FBO users, scheduled service, we are increasing the landing fee for aircraft under 6,000 pounds maximum gross takeoff weight from $6 to $7. The whole number is at the FBO suggestion, just to avoid dealing with change. And then we are proposing the same landing fee increase to $3.74 for our multiplier for those aircraft above 6,000 pounds, and a 3.5% increase to ramp fee. On page 4 for FBO users, so our transient FBO users, we are proposing the same increases. Excuse me. On pages 4 to 5 for our tie down and hangar tenants, we're increasing our tie downs by 3.5%. And we are increasing, and I apologize, this isn't redlined, but the T hangars I missed the 3.5% increase in our final documents. The T-hanger rate will increase to $435 per month. So then going back to hanger rentals, we're adjusting our methodology to our general hanger rents. So prior even to my arrival, the airport had a methodology that assessed higher rates to aircraft with more than one engine or that had turbine or jet engines, or turboprop or jet engines. The basis wasn't necessarily wrong at that time. You know, the number and type of engines was a real quick way to sort through and assess weight-based fees in lieu of a more complicated methodology. But over time, space at the aircraft, which we define by the multiplier of length by wingspan, has become more critical to the airport than weight. And the industry has also built lighter turboprops and ultralight jets. So the number and type of engines is now a less precise surrogate for weight, and it's not a critical design or limiting factor for the airport. So at the staff level, we spent some time with this, and while we wanted to stay away from administering a length by width formula, we went through some iterations of length only or wingspan only, and this really is the best way, at least in our opinion. So what we did is we looked at the types of aircraft that currently inhabit our hangars, and we set a base rate on a Cessna 172, which is at the smaller end of those aircraft. It's 36 feet in wingspan and 27 feet long for a total square footage area of 972 square feet. We rounded that up to 1,000 square feet and set that as our fixed rate, so that it's sort of the base entry rate for an aircraft is a C-172. We then performed some rate modeling and recommended that we charge an additional 75 cents per foot squared, or per square foot. We felt this was the most fair. I have some work in the packet. We looked at 50 cents, we looked at $1. 75 cents just felt right when we looked at the scope of the increase or decreases to specific aircraft. There are relative winners and losers. There will be with any methodology change. But again, we believe this is the most efficient way to recover the cost for a limiting factor, which in this case is space. So all of the rate information is in your packet. It is confusing with the red line. So I did just want to pull out and walk through the methodology for the monthly rate changes that we're suggesting for a non-heated hangar. And so go through those. I think I have 6 aircraft types. So a Cessna 172 is going to increase from $315 to $327. That's the base design aircraft. That's just increasing by our 3.5% assessment. A Cessna 402, when you apply the methodology, owner of a 402 was paying $630. Now they'll be paying $765. So their rents will go up. We've had a Piper 46, I believe that's the Malibu. The assessment for that would go from $315 to $512. So that's also an increase. The SF-50, which is the Cirrus Vision jet, so again, an ultralight or a sport jet, under our old rates and charges version, it would have been paying, or the owner would have paid monthly $1,575 in hangar rents. The revised rent would be down to $461, which is significant. A Pilatus PC-12, a significant increase from $945 to $1,445. And then a Beechcraft King Air would decrease from $1,575 to $1,319. So that's the scale of the winners and losers. I hate to put it that way, but some costs go up, some costs go down. The total amount to the airport decreases, but I don't think that's necessarily important. It's not a major revenue cost center that impacts the operation of our GA area. And honestly, my hope is that we save in time trying to configure the hangar and Boyd Ramparash after this works itself out. You do have some comments in your packet. We're not trying to drive any tenants in or out of hangars or to tie downs, but these prices also will encourage smaller aircraft owners, I think, to occupy these hangars. And then the only other additional changes we have in the rates and charges, Billy, you don't have to scroll to them, are changes to our de-icing callback hours and a small adjustment to our freight rates. With that being said, these dates, or the date for these rates to go into effect would be April 1st. The rate methodology changes for hangars, they are a little bit complicated, but we've tried to keep it relatively simple. So staff are here to answer any questions that the commission would have.
Commissioners, any questions? Concerns? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on the proposed rates and charge changes?
We don't have any public, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been made and seconded. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Any further discussion by the commission on the proposed rates and charges? Is there a motion to adopt the rates and charges as published?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Then thank you, with thanks to all the staff for working on this. With that, we will move on to the capital program committee final recommendations for airport capital improvement plans. Mr. Carberg.
Okay, thank you. So I have an update for you on the capital program committee process. The process has concluded, and I'd say with mostly positive, maybe mixed results for the airport. The purpose of the capital committee is to review projects as requested by town departments and enterprise funds, and to take a position to recommend or not recommend them to the finance committee for their support on the annual town meeting warrant. A positive recommendation is important at this stage to move a project forward, though it is not required. The airport could still ask the select board or annual town meeting on annual town meeting floor to take action and adopt the project. So the following airport capital projects that we put forward and I've updated the commission on were recommended by the capital committee. Briefly, these are a new ARF truck, supplemental PFAS fund authorization, gate hard stands, GSE storage, the septic upgrade at the ARF station, our paint beads and markings that we do periodically, our combined equipment project, which is a GPU, preconditioned air unit, a tug and a bus. And then very recently today, the noise barrier. We were able to speak with the capital committee and they graciously took it back on today, re-voted and included it in the recommendations. So I'm grateful to them for including that in their agenda today. We did have two projects that were not recommended for funding, and these were the ARP station repair and the employee housing townhouse. Each project that was not recommended for funding was subject to different circumstances. I'd say, for my opinion, for the ARC project, we asked for funding for three components: pulling out an old AFFF mixing system that's embedded in the ARC base station floor, a new roof, and flooring improvements. And I think from the committee, we received very reasonable feedback that they'd prefer to see the airport divide these up, pursue the most critical, which is the roofing item, and bring this back to the special town meeting or next annual town meeting. And this is good feedback, and I intend to set us on a course to proceed accordingly. For the townhouse, this project was discussed extensively in front of the committee, and I accept the lack of a recommendation for this annual town meeting, but I did want to express my disappointment in the process. I'm concerned, and it's not across the entirety of the capital committee, but I think there's a sentiment in some members that really the airport should violate FAA revenue policy by expanding eligibility to municipal employees beyond that which we're allowed. I believe the airport should review and resubmit this project for a future special town meeting or annual town meeting, but I do expect it to run into difficulty, as I believe there are forces in the town and in the community that seek to, let's say, improperly leverage resources away from the airport. So I think this is an issue and a battle that the airport just has to be aware of, keep tabs on, and keep promoting our need and our restrictions. But otherwise, I didn't count them up. I think it's 8 through, 2 not through. Other departments certainly had a mixed bag as well, going through the capital committee process. Happy to answer any questions on those projects or those project schedules.
Thanks, Mr. Carberg. I will expand on it a little bit. Both Mr. Carberg and I attended probably a half a dozen of these Capcom meetings and tried vigorously to provide information that was requested, and explain the airport's position on the housing. I concur that at this point, with a negative recommendation, we would have to try to get the finance committee to vote contrary to the advisory. The Capcom is advisory, and I think we would have a challenge with that, and that our efforts would be better spent in refining our design and numbers and going back, I think, hopefully for special town meeting with a renewed focus on that project. I am appreciative of the chair of the Capcom revisiting the sound attenuation wall. I think that it was a rushed vote at the end. We weren't aware that they had questions, so we were able to. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Mr. Lasden. We have had some discussions the last few meetings about the progress of the wall, and MJ really came through today last minute with a or on short notice, I should say, with a schematic plan that I believe is what helped provide the Capcom the information that they weren't aware of for the project, and to be able to include that in their report. And I'm not sure we would have been there without having had that plan. So it's much appreciated, Mr. Laston.
You're welcome.
That being said, on that particular project, I guess we'll wait to we get to the South Ramp update for a little more information on the status of that. But let's keep going with capital program is going to then lead into town meeting. So we've got some stuff going on here in the next couple of months, and hopefully we can get everything else approved as recommended. So thanks again, Mr. Carberg. Does anybody have any questions related to that Capcom process? All right, seeing none. Let's move on to pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 3 items for the commission's review this week in the exhibit.
Excuse me for 1 second. I'm sorry. I see that Ms. Topham is listed as an attendee, a panelist. Would you be able to promote her, and or Ms. Topham, are you able to participate? Okay, well, if that gets, oh, you're live.
Again?
All right. Well, thank you. We're so happy that you're here with us. We're moving on to leases and contracts. Mr. Carberg.
Okay, 3 items for your review this week in the exhibit. The first item is a change order with the Pearl Company for $78,337.60. This is a single change order for delay costs associated with the beginning of the project. We've discussed these costs extensively with our OPM and Pearl and negotiated to this current position, which represents a reduction of about 16% from the original amount. I believe it's reasonable given that there was an actual delay that resulted from the airport's team's review of submittals. The second item is a contract with Victor Brandon for $1,299,000 for the runway 624 centerline rehabilitation work. This is an AIP project that is 90% FAA and 5% Mass DOT Aeronautics funded to perform the non-emergency portion of the runway centerline work this spring. And then the third item is a task order for ongoing PFAS services, and I'd like to defer presentation of that, if I may, to Ms. Woods, our environmental coordinator.
Hi, everyone. I'll walk through this quickly because there are a few changes in this specific order. They affect task G3, continued drinking water testing and reporting, task G4, public involvement and communication protocol, task G5, Western residential drinking water sampling, and task G6, MCP reporting. But the greatest change that I found within the amendment relates to task G7, soil and groundwater investigation. There are a number of changes in this amendment that are actually covered by previous funding from former amendments and task orders. So that covered a lot of our bases for the charges of the 8 monitoring wells that were installed on the west side and a lot of the additional sampling that will be taking place through this spring and summer. The Weston has indicated that they will need 391 additional administrative hours for the PM, LSP, PFAS lead, and other team members to manage all of this additional work. And that comes out to a total of $70,830.83 in fees for Weston and task G7 alone. So that's the most substantial change. In total, the total amount for this task order is not to exceed $582,661.72, which includes the original approved fee of $410,579.43, and then this additional amendment fee of $172,082.29. I am happy to go through some of the other elements that are included in this amendment that fall under tasks G3, 4, 5, and 6. But again, they are significantly less expensive, and I want to be mindful of time. So I can go through those as requested by the commission.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Commissioners, any questions?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1?
I just have one question about
Yes,
the other.
sir.
So the Pearl was because we delayed the beginning by so many days and we got fined for that essentially. Is there an equivalent fine on the other end if they're not done in time?
Yes.
I recall there is a liquidated damage claim for their delay. I don't recall what that amounts to, if they were to delay.
And so, and we have a finalized date based on the adjustment of the 23 days on the front end?
Yes, so that $78,337 represents the pre-negotiated delay cost for our end. At the end of the project, we reconcile the change orders if there is an equivalent delay in occupancy caused by the contractor. We settle the balance of those change orders.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Motion's been made and second. The motion would be to approve the leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1. Any further discussion? Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. And that'll lead us to pending matters, starting with the South Apron Ramp Expansion Project update, Mr. Carberg.
Okay, the new cameras are commissioned and operational. The noise monitor integration is ongoing with active integration by the vendor. Currently, there's an issue. It's not a hardware issue, but it's a software and display one. So we're not quite ready to go live. But I'm confident. It's a known integrator, Passor, who provides us existing operational and noise abatement programs. And it's an off-the-shelf hardware display. So I don't think that this is going to be a lingering issue. And I hope that it is integrated and active for next meeting. Regarding the noise barrier, as I updated previously, while we've been advocating for a positive review of funding, we have not stopped moving forward on design. I've directed Mr. Lousden at MJI to no longer consider the solar PV as part of the design. The early indication is that the simple economic payback is just not worth it. Frankly, we were nowhere close to making it come out in dollars and cents for us. The geotechnical investigation for the wall footings is complete. We're looking to conclude design within the next month to the level where it will go out to bid in March. And we'll have bids in hand, or our hope is to have bids in hand to inform if any potential changes are needed to the requested amount on any time. Any questions on that project before I move on from that?
Hearing none, let's move on.
For the PFAS update, I'd again like to defer to Ms. Woods for her review.
The only PFAS update I think that's relevant to bring today is an update on the home connections. I think that's front of mind for everyone, as it's been a really impactful and fast-moving project for residents surrounding the airport. We now have 5 homes that have been connected: 25 Monahans, 31 Monahans, 1 Webster, 50 Okawah, and 3 Webster. There are 3 of them that have been completed and paid, 1 that has been completed and not paid yet. We're waiting on invoices, and 1 that has been completed, and there's additional work for connection on irrigation. So we're waiting on that. There are 10 homes now that are in the process of being connected. Those vary in terms of where they are in progress, but they're moving quickly, which is fantastic. And there's now only 1 home that we have not been able to get a hold of. That's 83 Skyline. Voicemails have been left, but we're still trying to get in touch with that resident or that home caretaker. There are 0 homes left to be reached out to. So I think that that's going exceptionally well, that we now have 5 completed, 10 in the process of being completed, and 1 that we're still struggling to get in touch with. But that's it for PFAS.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody else? I appreciate that. We'll look forward to a next update next month. Crew quarters.
Okay, for the crew quarters project, 3 of the boxes are scheduled to be trucked to New Bedford today, and 3 more tomorrow. I do not know yet if that has occurred, but that is the schedule. The barge delivery to Nantucket is scheduled for this Thursday and Friday. Crane mobilization is scheduled for Monday the 20th and setting the boxes on the 21st, with truss delivery on the 22nd. Again, those dates are subject to change, but exciting nonetheless. We're also working to get the easement for the transformer pad out of the National Grid right-of-way group and into scheduling. Once that happens, it will move forward very quickly, or typically moves forward very quickly. And I believe we have all of our paperwork set for annual town meeting as well. Annual town meeting is the body that needs to grant the permanent easements for the transformer pad, both for our housing project and at the South Ramp extension. And we're coordinating that with town. And then as an FYI, I am developing a draft policy for placement of full-time airport employee into the apartments associated with the dorm. It's not a complicated policy. It's just outlining the steps that the manager will perform, and I'll have that for your February commission meeting for review. Any questions before I move into terminal?
Please move on.
Hearing none. And for the terminal optimization project, I'll warn you, I am trying to solicit a little bit of comment or feedback for my benefit in developing the scope with Mr. Lansden. So I held an initial scoping meeting with McFarland Johnson relative to the 3 items for the terminal that I discussed in the last meeting. Revamping or replacing the geothermal system, 10.3.0, and the common use ticketing system. So I have given McFarland direction on the scope, but I asked them to really wait and not put pen to paper until I could review my strategy with the commission here. So I've directed Mr. Lasden not to move forward with the tent and the CUSE work as part of this design scope. That's contrary to what I told you in a previous meeting. The tent does have 2 to 3 years of useful life. And while I think CUSE would be a really appropriate solution, I think it's appropriate to recognize the manager transition and have the incoming manager review and direct to those scoping items. I don't think the commission loses anything by hitting pause on those 2 elements of scope for a few months. However, I still think it's imperative that the commission continue to direct and advance a design and a scope to upgrade and replace the geothermal system. So I've tentatively given McFarland direction to scope 2 alternatives, in addition to them performing a preferred design on the Whitting alternative, as well as the typical bidding and resident engineer functions. And these are options 2 and 3. 2 is converting the existing system to a closed loop system. Option 3 is converting it to a conventional system. My opinion, and it's my opinion only on option 1, which is to pump and treat using the open loop system. I don't endorse designing this alternative because I think it's too difficult, but we certainly can ask the consultant to include it in their scope, from which they would then choose a preferred design to move into the design and bidding process. My reasons against option 1 are, I have 3 of them. Early in mitigation and early in our PFAS response, the commission took an aggressive approach to providing municipal water service to impacted residents cross and down gradients from the airport. And this was instead of going to the route of a future pump and treat if required by Mass DEP. Pumping and treating water is a mitigation step under the MCP, and there's nothing wrong with the commission doubling down on mitigation options. But it's an additional and a costly action, and it's not one at this point that we know the commission would be required to do as part of its mitigation. The other is pumping and treating generates spent carbon and waste. In my experience with our GAC system for the fuel farm is that it's expensive to manage and dispose of this waste. We pump out the fuel farm waste, the fuel farm water periodically, generate a volume of treated waste, and it's expensive and it's a sink to monitor. And I'm generally uncomfortable with continuing to move the plume with the well system that is currently in place. As we have it now, it's suspected to have moved contaminated groundwater from under the fuel farm towards residences west of the airport. While a pump and treat in place would treat the water, there are still risks of failure and lapses in that treatment. And unlike the GAC system, we can turn off the GAC system and let water accumulate in the fuel farm basin until we can replace or repair the GAC system. We can't turn off the geothermal system to the airport. That is really just my opinion. That doesn't mean we can't include option 1 in the scope we're giving to McFarland Johnson. It's just additional cost to evaluate this scope to then pick a preferred alternative. I am definitely interested in the commission's feedback here. Rich has not started to burn time on this project, and you can certainly direct him accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marks. I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Garberg. Mr. Marks.
Yeah, I think that you may be very surprised at how expensive it's going to be to convert it from an open to a closed geothermal system. From the little bit of research I did when I was out at the show out in Las Vegas, it seems like the solution for this is relatively easy to do. It has 100% backup in the system the way they design them. And the company that I spoke with, they deal with the old materials and reclaiming them all themselves. I'd be happy to share that information with Mr. Lazen if he was interested in it. And I think it does give us, at least by not, and that's a pretty simple thing to do. This, you tell them what the flow is in the system and they'll tell you exactly what you need to put in it. I'd given them some preliminary numbers, but I wanted to go actually look at the equipment to see what it takes to, the actual equipment takes, because the system's over built for obvious reasons. So you have an extra well and so on. And I just feel like if down the road, we have the ability to then utilize the system to actually result, to help reduce the problem overall in that area. And I think that would be a positive step. May not be required, but maybe that's the only thing we would have to do as far as the mitigation goes, showing the benefit of it. It's just my opinion.
I echo that. Any commissioners have any other thoughts on that? My sense, I'll just sort of add on, is that I think that it will be hard for us to evaluate the alternatives without that understanding. And I agree that the amount of wells that are likely necessary for the closed loop system is going to cover a large area and have a very significant expense. So I think that I agree to Mr. Carberg's statement that we might not go with a full-blown design of that, but I think, and Mr. Lasden, I welcome your input as to how we might go about this, the extent of work that you think that we could do to have a sense of, like some kind of 60% design or, schematic of what that pump and filter type of an arrangement would look like, and maybe some very preliminary estimates on cost. Is that doable?
Yes. In the PDD for the terminal, we already looked at the closed loop, and we looked at converting it into geothermal. So we already have sort of a look at those, and we've had early discussions. And Mr. Marks, you're right. They make a treatment system just like the GAC, only it would be sized essentially for a municipal water system. It would be just a much bigger GAC system that would be installed into it. So we can get some prices for that and provide a little sort of spreadsheet presentation on the three options and some basic costs. Absolutely.
Thank you. And maybe a general understanding of, what kind of infrastructure would we be talking about? Do they basically put it in a trailer, and where would that go on the, on, again, not full design, but just
Sure.
an initial scoping of, what are we talking about for a facility to accommodate that type of a treatment system?
Yeah, I'm almost thinking, right now, I think and I'm just talking out loud, you have FBO storage in the old electric vault room. That we might be able to repurpose that space and put this in there.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if it was gonna be like a tractor trailer.
Yeah, no, I'd have to, I'm just
You know,
thinking out loud that
like
size of that room, you already have a room built.
Is that above ground, that room?
What's that?
Is that room above ground?
It's above ground. It's next to the tower's emergency generator.
Okay.
And it used to be the electric vault for the airfield lighting.
Okay. Because one of the things, the comments that the guy made when I spoke with him was that not to have it in a basement, because it made it hard to get the media out to replace that process.
Okay. Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, is everyone in agreement with that approach?
Yes.
Or any concerns? Okay, super. Do we need any other direction or on the remainder of the terminal optimization project, Mr. Carberg?
No, I think, unless the commission takes exception to pressing pause on 10.3.0 and the queue system, I think Mr. Laston has what he needs to proceed for scope development. And I'd say I appreciate the feedback and the discussion.
Thank you. And that will take us on to the master plan update.
Okay, so thank you. So this is not the right date. I got out a little bit in front of my skis on this. So I'll have a general project update. We held a third TAC meeting on December 9th. I put that presentation in the minutes into your packet. In a sort of a briefer summary, the meeting focused on 3 items. The first were the facility requirements, which is what we look at. We look at what a generic facility with our operational profile would require on average for space, whether this is building an office space, vehicle parking, ramp space, etc. And I want to stress that this is an inventory exercise, not that it's not a mandate that we meet a baseline average for all airports. So, for example, expansion could be an opportunity to meet a shortfall, but it's not the only option. Other items such as administrative controls would be a future tool use for management. And those are all determined in later implementation steps. So really the purpose is to inventory a facility and see where it stands. We reviewed runway 624 alternatives. We looked at future erosion on the South Shore and potential loss of runway safety area. This exercise didn't determine what we're going to do about that, but it did establish a few recommendations that we would evaluate in a future environmental analysis. And then we looked at a more complex review of airfield geometry and alternatives for future improvement of stub taxiways and utilization of runway 1533, sort of a northwest wind day with multiple arrivals and getting those off of the runway. We are now beginning the final campaign of the master plan update, and we're posting completed inventory, forecast, and facility chapters to our website. And this is also a good spot to recognize the manager transition and integrate that into the process. I'm working with the consultant to line up a master plan presentation for the commission's March meeting. And this would be specifically to help guide the financial and implementation plan chapter. And that chapter of the master plan identifies the airport's financial resources and sequencing plan to both AIP projects, as we've discussed in the TAC meetings, but also the internal strategies for the airport's development and delivery of self-funded programs and environmental efforts. So I think that March meeting and subsequent chapter review is the right opportunity for the commission and the new manager to formally review and accept the implementation of the master plan. And we'll get Mr. Lassen and his group teed up to move in that direction. We also will continue to identify and work towards a date and publication for a second open house in the terminal, similar to the first. Poster boards will provide refreshments, airport staff and consultants to meet and greet and walk members of the public through those poster boards. With that being said, I know I've put a lot forward for the March meeting, but are there any questions on the master plan?
Any questions? No, that seems to make sense.
Okay. Moving into the manager's report. Let's see, we previously discussed the master plan for the geometry project and DBE update. I believe our DBE plan is still under review. Our concessions DBE plan has been approved and signed by the FAA. The geometry project is functionally finished. We're waiting on closeout of the reimbursable agreement for the fiber optic work that we performed. And honestly, this may take a while. I will probably pull this off the agenda, off the manager's report for next month, unless there's an update going forward. ARF truck is now off the line. It has been built. We're going to send 2 staff members to Oshkosh, our mechanic and our operations superintendent for inspection. No update on continued environmental monitoring. For the PFAS mitigation grant, FAA is reviewing the sole source documentation letter. Our group has responded to a request for a comment from FAA, so it's back in their court. For our MEPA/NEPA updates, MEPA/NEPA is our environmental permitting effort that is going to come out of the master plan. We're delaying this to fiscal year 2026 to accommodate further review of the implementation stage of the master plan. It doesn't impact the airport project schedule, just the schedule for use of our entitlement funding. Also, I really think it's best that the airport fully understands the outcome of the master plan, because that sets the stage for environmental permitting. And to make sure that environmental permitting fulfills its goal, you really want it to be scoped and accurate to the projects on the master plan, so it can be done properly. But there's no loss or delay of other projects that I foresee associated with that. For ramp lighting, we finalized the scope with McFarland Johnson, and we will proceed with obtaining a fee estimate, and we'll bring that to the commission in a future meeting for their concurrence. And then thank you for your approval of the runway centerline work. For our non-AIP projects, we've discussed housing previously. We are still working on the lease with Mr. Hagedorn for Hangar 8. For the fence relocation on the South Shore, we are working on setting up a meeting with the FAA to review their airspace determination relative to moving the South Shore fence above the beach and into the RSA, or near the RSA, actually. I don't have an update on the refueling pad wall repair. In your packet, I have included our submitted ALP update to reflect the installation of the future electric aircraft charging station adjacent to the FBO. I realize now it's a very small document. If anyone needs a larger, half plan or 11 by 17 photo or prints, please let me know. We'll make that available. I can only find it because I knew where it was. For ARF transition, so staff are working to develop our ARF transition plan. The fuel farm has been fluorine-free foam it's been operating on fluorine-free foam for several years. The new truck off of the line from Oshkosh will utilize only fluorine-free foam. Cameron, Preston, and Fred are leading our effort to, with Jeb's help, actually, I'm jumping on. I have them listed here somewhere. But anyway, they're working on a plan for the best way to clean and transition our remaining 2 vehicles, Airport 1 and 3, to fluorine-free foam as well. I'd say it's a very complicated dance to send each truck off to a facility to drain, rinse, properly dispose of the rinsates, restock with fluorine-free foam, and then certify its performance to the standards. So, here we go. Preston, Cameron, Fred, Jeb, and others deserve credit. They've been highly motivated to identify the process to achieve this, and they've set a very lofty internal goal for completion of this by the end of the summer. We will not be the first airport in the country to complete an F3 transition. I think we would if we weren't on an island, but we are going to be in that top quartile. We're working through 2 tenant alteration applications. Nothing new to report for GJ Smith Incorporated, but we also have approved a minor change to the TSA screening layout. They're moving the TSA agent stations forward closer to the roll-up door. For RFP bid status review, I don't have any changes here. We are working to advance both the 33 bunker lease and the REOI for the flat top roof building. For operations update for the fence repair on Monahanset Road, we've incurred approximately $12,000 in costs, and we're moving forward with cost recovery from the driver insurance carrier. At a high level for 2 end-of-year stats that I track daily, I think they're always important and interesting. For the calendar year, the early indication is that we are up 4% in our securely screened passenger market with 144,962 screened passengers. This is based on our daily reports from TSA. For that day's expected passenger screening, it will differ from total enplanements, but it's a reliable daily record that we track and we use for allocating resources. We also finished the calendar year up 6% on Jet A gallons sold over last year, closing at 2,143,473 gallons, and that's a new calendar year high for us. Our PCI inspection was completed. We look forward to reviewing those results and thank Mass DOT Aeronautics for that work. For our steamship fuel reservations, this morning I received the fuel reservation schedule for the steamship. We did not receive everything we requested. We never do. That's not negative. It's just typical at this point for us to sit down with the steamship and try to identify and firm up any additional reservations formally or work with other bulk buyers on schedule and do a little bit of horse trading on these slots. I have a little bit more work to do with staff on analyzing the data, but we will need I believe, an additional 1 to 2 reservations per week during our 6-week peak. Let's see, no update on the runway 15 reels upgrade with FAA Tech Ops. No update on the FAA inspection. It's still scheduled for May 27th through 29th. For Hangar 1 and FedEx, it's been in the news. FedEx locally has been subject of some online articles. So I just wanted to review the arrangements. Nothing at the airport is really affected. So originally, I think most folks will remember Ocean Wings. They held the original ground lease for Hangar 1 with the airport. Several years ago, they sold to Brookfield Assets, who subleased the hangar to FedEx, who operates air freight through the hangar. My understanding is that FedEx has changed their front of the house operation and how they handle freight with the public. But contractually, there's no change to the airport leases. We still have a lease with Brookfield Assets, who subleases to FedEx, whose route is still being flown by Mountain Air Cargo. And they are still using the hangar for a distribution from the aircraft to the truck for package delivery. Any questions before I move on to statistics?
Commissioners? Hearing none, please move on.
Okay, for November, operations are down 8%. Year to date, they remain up 2%. Southwest operations were down 47% in November over last year. Employments were up 15% in November and we're up 10% year to date. So again, you see the continued trend declining or stable operations, but employment's growing. Cape Air for November, Boston was up 8%, New Bedford was up 3%. Happy to report Hyannis was up 217%, 460 passengers versus 145 for the year prior, for the 9th month of greater than 200% growth. Then the Vineyard traffic was down 24%. All of our seasonal large air carrier seasons are now concluded. I will not report on that. For fuel, the source data isn't pulling correctly. I believe it's in the 3-year average column. So if what I present to you is different than the report in your packet, my report is correct. So I apologize for that. We'll fix the error. Jet A overall is up 3.9% on the fiscal year to date compared to the 3-year average, even with the previous 3-month average, and up 70% for November. I'm sorry, 70% for December. Jet A in the FBO is up 7.2% over the 3-year average, 4.7% for the previous 3 months, and 45% for December. I won't review the commercial data as it's skewed with that season being over. Low lead is down 12% on the fiscal year to date, for the 3-year average, down 1.6% over the 3-month average, and up 15.8% for November. Freight is down 10% for November, down 17% year to date. Cape Air Freight, UPS, and FedEx are down. The mail was up. And then we had 0 noise calls and 0 APU action log items. For personnel, we are welcoming Rihanna Perrin as our new FBO customer service representative. She replaces Elizabeth, who has moved over into administration. You may recognize Rihanna from her previous counterwork with us as a seasonal employee, and she's also worked for airlines in the terminal. So we welcome her. And then, regrettably, I have to announce the resignation of Noe Pineda, the airport custodian for 22 years previous. It's over the loss of his housing. His last day is this Friday. We had a party to send him off last week. We will miss him, but he's in good spirits, and we wish him well in his newest career in Hyannis. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on Manager Carber's report? Hey, hearing none. Thank you. We will move on to the next item, which is the discussion and selection of the final candidates for the airport manager position. The Airport Commission held 2 meetings today and interviewed 2 candidates, Mr. Michael Cares, as well as Mr. Warren Smith. We have 2 extremely qualified candidates. These candidates were brought to us through the process with ADK, using as executive search. Really, I just would say right out of the gate that both are very qualified and good hands with either of these gentlemen. And with that, I will open it up to discussion by the commission. We are having an open discussion amongst commissioners as to which of these 2 gentlemen we may wish to extend an offer to. And then we will have an executive session topic, which is on our agenda for the purpose of contract negotiations and the terms of the actual offer, which would be made to the selected candidate. Again, both have, I think, excellent qualifications. I think both interviewed very well. I'm open to any thoughts or discussion from any commissioners.
Well, I'll say, I agree. I think they're both great candidates. I think it's really hard to distinguish, but with Mr. Smith, I thought that he was a candidate who really wanted to be on Nantucket. Like, he was very enthusiastic and wanting, so I thought that was a big positive. Also, he's been in an isolated community, so Nantucket wouldn't be isolated to him. Anyway, that's a good start.
Yes, I think he said he had to drive 60 miles to a grocery store, something I
Right.
picked up on, and is paying over $5 a gallon for gas. So, you know, a drive to Wisconsin might not seem so bad. I don't want to be, honestly, I think as well that Mr. Cares had some great qualities in terms of driving here and taking the slow boat over and getting a sense of the island as well.
Right.
But
He knows.
commissioners, anyone else?
Sure.
Weigh in. Who?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I liked them both. I think the group that presented them to us did a great job. I tend to like the older guy, Michael, a little bit more because I think just coming in with a little bit more gray hair, a little bit of an older guy, he might be respected a little bit more. The other thing is, I think he's from this area. And one of my concerns is somebody comes all the way from here, from Arizona. They spend 6 months here. The wife hates the place, and they want to leave for whatever reason. I think Michael, being an older guy from Mattapoisett, is more likely to want to stay here. And I kind of like the gray hair just a little bit more. Again, I would support either one, but that's my comment.
Marks, floor is yours.
Yeah, I enjoyed both of them. I understand where Anthony was coming from with the gray hair and the maturity that Michael brought to the table. Although I enjoyed Warren's enthusiasm, he feels very connected to what he's doing now. He loves what he's doing now, and yet he's very intelligent when you listen to him speak about the different projects that he's pushed forward and his interaction with governments and having to deal with 3 different governments in his airport himself, not through a committee, but by himself. He has to go deal with that. And I feel like there is a risk. I agree with Anthony with the distance of where he is now, but I feel like I personally enjoyed the way he interacted with us, and I feel like if he interacts with the staff that way and the town that way, that I feel like he's got the intelligence to do us a great job myself.
Topham? Ms. Topham, any thought? Are you with us?
Really, they both equally equally whatever qualified. So I'm just gonna go and the people that know more than I know will do vote. Thank you.
I'll offer my thoughts. Absolutely a hard decision, which I think is a testament to the process. And you know, I do have a sense similar to Mr. Buscarin that for interactions potentially with some of the town outside regulatory forces that Mr. Cares maybe a slight lead in terms of I think that level of experience, but I was extremely impressed with Mr. Smith's also enthusiasm, and I think both related to Nantucket and his profession. I think there's no doubt that each of these gentlemen, live and breathe aviation, and have a real love of their professions. Though Mr. Smith made 2 comments that resonated with me. One, I think all airport managers as a primary duty where we say it's for safety, but I think that what that really ties to is regulatory compliance. And Mr. Smith mentioned that, his first year he arrived at an airport and we had discussed their Part 139 study, and that, he essentially over the course of his first year brought them from double digit or even triple digit in non-compliance enforcement to completely compliant. And that speaks volumes to me of somebody who had to really focus on that, and a big accomplishment. I think that really struck me. And then his approach that he described in terms of I forget the term he used for the Japanese work, but essentially go to the work, and not being afraid to jump in the in the car and go out and see what's going on, and sort of really have a full grasp of everything that's happening on your facility. And as the manager, it's your facility, right? You have all of the staff that it's everybody, but the buck stops with him. And so those are probably the 2 things that give me a slight edge towards Mr. Smith, personally, but it's a close one, I will say. And I think we would be fortunate with either candidate. And Mr. Carr has had a lot of he I thought interviewed very well also.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I think we would entertain a motion if someone were so inclined to extend an offer to either of these 2 gentlemen.
Are you looking for that now?
if everyone's, I mean, there's always, we can make a motion and second and then have further discussion. But I think that's essentially, everyone's kind of said their piece, and I think we are at a point of, we've got to make a selection and then, and then continue on with this process.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we offer the job to Warren Smith.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
and Mr. Marks,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. And again, I will be sure that we reach out. We'll talk further in executive session about the terms of that offer, but that we extend extreme gratitude and thanks also to Mr. Karras.
100%.
Thank you all, and thank you to our staff, for all of your support through this process as well. Is much appreciated. This really was a team building effort, I think, as well. And with that, we will move on to commissioners' comment for any items not on the agenda or for suggested future agenda items. Do we have any commissioner comments? Hearing none. Public comment. Not seeing any. And with that, I would entertain a motion to enter executive session per General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for review and possible release. Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against the manufacturer of PFAS and other potential sources of PFAS, where the chair has determined an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. And clause 2, to just consider strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel for the airport manager, not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Okay.
Motion been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you all very much.
The recording has stopped.
Okay. Billy, are you gonna stick around for executive session, please?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Noah, has he already got? Noah, are you sticking around for the first three?
You are muted, Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Arthur. I'll be here for A, B, and C, and I'll sign off prior to D.
Great. And then Mina, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Executive session minutes are all being held, correct, Billy?
Correct. We have NCTV actually participating.
As the host, NCTV, are you able to sign off or make someone else as the co-host? Are you able to remove them?
I am not able to remove. I'm not sure if there is someone there, actually.
Okay. I think we probably could proceed. NCTV, anyone at the wheel?
Yeah, I got a notification saying the meeting is now streaming live on custom live streaming service.
Oh yeah, let's be very careful then.
I have a number. I'll mute myself and I'll give them a
And I'm
call.
gonna go to the town video. Yes, the airport commission is,
now streaming live on Custom Live.
we are live.
Oh, yeah, let's be very careful then.
Yeah, when I spoke with NCTV in the beginning of the meeting, they should have ended, because I'm not allowed to. They should have ended the YouTube live. But my understanding is that there is no one there to maintain that.
I think we should all leave this meeting and log back in and see if that works.
I know.
Okay. If not, I will create a Zoom link very quick so we can do that.
Okay.
That's probably the safest way, right?
Mhm.
Just make a new link, send it to us.
Give me a few minutes and I will create the Zoom and send it to all of you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I gotta end.
You'll log it off?